Marysville, 1819, a dream. To today, the city 200 years later that has lots of heritage, love, and growth. Let's talk to some individuals about how Marysville has changed.
In 1817, Samuel Culbertson purchased 450 acres of land where Marysville is located today. He heard in 1819 that the Ohio legislature was talking about establishing a new county, which was to be called Union County, and he realized that his land would be located almost in the center of that new county, and he thought that if he could get a county seat located on his property, it would make his land more valuable and he could sell lots. So he began trying to lobby the legislature to have his land have the county seat. He hired a surveyor from Zanesville, Charles Roberts, in 1819 and said, survey a town on Mill Creek. There was also already a road running through there from Delaware to Urbana, and he said, survey a town there. So Roberts surveyed a town. It had 96 lots. It had a diamond-shaped public square. And Culbertson then said, I'm going to call this town after my little daughter, Mary. And so it's named after Mary Ellen Culbertson. And he asked the Ohio legislature to designate that as the new county seat. The problem was there was nothing there. It was only on paper. The only town that was in the new county was the town of Milford. So the Ohio legislature established Union County in 1820. They named Milford as the temporary county seat. And they said, we'll set up a commission of 3 individuals to select a permanent county seat, and then they could decide whether Marysville would be named as the county seat. So Culbertson then began actively campaigning with the 3 legislatures. I'm sure he wined and dined them, or 3 commissioners, and wined and dined them and said, I want Marysville to be the new county seat. So they met in June of 1820 to select the permanent county seat. And what Culbertson did is he sent his brother, and this was the offer that he made. He said to the commissioners, if you will designate Marysville as the seat of justice for Union County, I will give to the county all of the even-numbered lots and 24 acres adjoining that could be split up into lots. Then when you sell those lots, you can build the courthouse and you could build the jail. They thought that was a deal they couldn't turn down, so they accepted it, and they named Marysville as the permanent county seat. Again, it hardly had anything there, so they said 1822 will change from Milford to Marysville, and in November of 1822, Marysville became the county seat.
From a simple sheet of paper with a design for the city of Marysville to today's forms of government which have developed from the past to the present, let's talk with Mayor J.R. Roush about how government has changed.
In October 1878, the first City Hall was erected here on the corner of 6th and Main. It was a 3-story building that included a clock tower and an opera house. The very first performance was a lecture by Susan B. Anthony, who became very famous in the United States, and you might actually recognize her face on one of our silver dollars. Also performing quite frequently at the opera house was local entertainer Noah Orr. The first building served the citizens for over 55 years, and after its demolition, we used the bricks and lumber so that we were able to reduce the cost of the second building, which was erected right here in the same location on July 1st, 1934. In 1974, a new fire station was built adjacent to City Hall. 10 years later, the city purchased the O.M. Scott's building across Main Street on 6th Street, and in 1986, we moved City Hall into that location. In 2013, we reconstructed City Hall at its original location on the corner of 6th and Main Street with an attached fire station. Marysville has operated under different forms of government in our 200-year history. In modern times, prior to 1981, we operated under the council-manager form of government. In 1982, we switched to a strong mayor form of government with a part-time mayor, local insurance agent Tom Knuckles, serving in that position. Over the next 33 years, we had 6 different mayors and many different administrators. So in November of 2013, to improve the continuity of the administration and also to reduce the authority in one person's hands, the mayor, the citizens elected to go back to a council-manager form of government effective on January 1st, 2016. Council is made up of 7 elected members. We have geographically separated the city into 4 wards. The 4 ward members are elected in the same year. Then 2 years later, the 3 at-large members who are elected by the entire city are elected. We feel that this gives every area of the city an opportunity to have a voice, and it also allows for continuity in that never will we have more than 4 members being replaced at one time.
Next, we have the opportunity to speak to Marysville Fire Department Chief Jay Riley about how the fire department has grown from a volunteer staff to its current day full service staff.
The Marysville Fire Department was started in 1845 with the purchase of a ladder trailer. That trailer was pulled by men. Believe it or not, they didn't even have horses as part of the fire department back then. Several years later, they did purchase a pumper trailer. That trailer was fueled by coal and still pulled by men. Over the years, we still use volunteers, and those volunteers did a fantastic job. In 1970, the fire department hired its first full-time person. Over the years, we've accumulated up to 43 people. In 2012, we moved to a second fire station on County Home Road. That fire station is very busy, and we're very thankful to the community. We've always maintained a presence at 209 South Main Street since our beginning in 1845.
From a village that was protected by 1 horse and 1 marshal, today the Marysville Police Division is led by Chief Floyd Golden. Let's talk with him about its history.
Okay, there's been a lot of changes in law enforcement here in Marysville over approximately the last 200 years. Like most cities or villages in Ohio, everyone started out as a village with a limited population, limited law enforcement, and for the most part, the law enforcement was a marshal or a constable that was appointed by the mayor, and what really resulted is they were really little more than a night watchman. In 1942, there was a change in state law, which a marshal could then become chief of police. Well, at that time, Clarence Brown was the constable for the village of Marysville. He was then promoted to the chief of police, and he also had an assistant named Dick Simpson. At that time, they didn't have regular police cars. More often than not, they'd use a personal vehicle. But in the late 40s, probably 49, 48, 49, they was able to get a late model Chevrolet that they used as a cruiser. And it was Chief Brown's intention that this vehicle be given to Officer Dick Simpson. It was presented to him in the Marysville Police Department at a football game, actually on the football field. So, but along with his car, all it was equipped with was a light on top, a red light siren combination, some flashing lights in the front and the back, and basically that was it. There was no radio, which really didn't matter because there really wasn't a base station to talk to at that time. Well, a couple of years later, they decided that perhaps a radio would be the thing to have, and they were kind of unique in their way to raise these funds. They had a fish fry, and they sold tickets, raffle tickets to motorists coming through, and also to city residents or village residents. And ultimately, they purchased a radio for their cruiser for $335. Now, these radios weren't like the radios we have nowadays that fit under the dashboard. The control head might, but actually they were very large and they filled much of the trunk of the car. The main way that police were notified in those days was there was in Marysville, like in some other villages, at the town square there was a light that was up near the traffic signal. When a call came in for the police, an operator turned this light on, and at that time the officer would call the operator and find out where the call was and handle that. Eventually, they started doing their dispatching through the sheriff's office. At this time, also, they had their headquarters in what was the old Marysville Fire Station at 209 South 5th Street. site of the present fire station. And it was in the front of that building. It was like a 10 by 12 foot room, which was actually their police station. Then we moved up to North Main Street to a Quonset hut that was the type that was formerly used in the military. This was quite a move for the police department because they had their own dispatching then. They had an office for the chief, they had an office for the lieutenant, and they had, of all things, a firing range in that building. And that was in 1972. They stayed in that building until 1986, at which time a building at 125 East 6th Street was renovated, and many of the city offices, including the police department, was placed in that building. Gave us a lot more room and a lot more professional. In April of 2013, we relocated to our present facility here at 1250 West 5th Street, and this building houses the police division as well as the Marysville Municipal Court. Police departments have grown quite a bit in all those years.
Every growing community has a need for solid medical care. I had the opportunity to visit with Chip Hubbs, President and CEO of Memorial Hospital.
Well, Memorial Hospital first came about in 1945. Folks were coming home from World War II, and the federal government set up something called the Hill-Burton program, where they gave matching monies to local communities to build hospitals for the soldiers that were coming home from the war and to support local communities. Local businesses, farmers, all those types of folks came together and raised about another $300,000 of local community money at that time, and together those monies were pooled and created Memorial Hospital, which opened in 1952. We had 40 beds at that time, and the first hospital started with 18 physicians and 13 RNs. You fast forward to today, if you go out to our parking lot, we're breaking ground on 2 new buildings. We have almost 240 physicians now, $300 million in revenue, nearly 1,000 employees. It's been a wonderful experience to have all this community support. In Marysville, Ohio, we're one of the fastest growing communities in Ohio, and it's been a challenge for us to continue to grow with services and facilities to meet the needs of our growing community.
History has taught us one thing: education is very important. Let's talk to Superintendent Diane Makins about Marysville education.
Like most of Marysville, Marysville Schools has seen significant change over the past 200 years. While the first 30 years of the school district's existence seems to lack records, we have found evidence of early settlers to Marysville educating their children in log cabins in their own family homes. Other families may host school for that day, but it was a small, localized experience. In 1825, the first school was organized and actually took place in Marysville's courthouse. In 1831, the first building was actually built, but however, due to growth, the school had to extend actually to churches in order to handle all of the students that had moved to the area. In 1849, the very first high school was built, and students were able to attend there. So it's kind of hard to believe that a district that now encompasses over 150 square miles and has over 5,200 students. It has a preschool, 5 elementaries, 1 intermediate, 1 middle, and 3 high school options. Really started with the idea of a family cabin, and it's just amazing how that's grown over time.
Agriculture has always been an important industry in Union County. Let's talk to local farmer Ryan Lee about agricultural changes in the past 200 years.
My family's seen a lot of change here in Union County and right here in Marysville specifically. My ancestors moved to Ohio in 1833 and settled in Union County in 1843. And the family farm here actually is a union of 2 family farms. County Home Road is the dividing line. North of that road belonged to my grandfather's family, and the south side belonged to my grandmother's family. And farms used to be a lot more diversified back then, had a lot of livestock, and it was a tradition of the day that if one of the youngsters was getting married in the family, that the neighbor boys would come over and help do chores, and that's how my grandpa met my grandma. And so one thing that's changed, agriculture-wise, farms have become a lot more specialized. Crop farms are specializing in even very specific crops, and livestock has gone away from the diversified to even specialization there, either dairy or hog production or chicken production, but probably not all of those, more than likely. And on the crop side, the machinery the side has changed so much. My grandpa used to get up before dawn and hitch horses to go to the field, and now we simply turn a key and we've got several hundred horsepower underneath the hood. And instead of having to guide horses through the field, we're using auto steer guided by GPS to keep our rows straight. The old timers, my grandpa's age and even my dad's age, used to drive around farms and look at the straight rows and admire who could drive really, really straight, and who they would make fun of a little bit. But today they drive around, they talk about who's got auto steer and who doesn't, because that's the determining factor in those straight rows. I think probably one of the biggest things that's changed is the amount of growth in the area. I know that the high school class has more than doubled since I've been in school a little over 25 years ago here, and that's a good thing. We've seen a significant change in attitude, where instead of just being a quiet industry in the background, the city, we're very, very fortunate that they see agriculture as a component of balanced economic development. And they've taken several steps to support that. We've had some new machinery dealerships move in. A large grain and fertilizer facility was built that really added to our bottom lines here. So we're very, very fortunate that the city sees agriculture as economic development, very blessed in that regard. And they continue to move forward with that even today.
After hearing the amazing story of the Lee family farm, let's return to Bob Parrott and learn about some other notable individuals who have called Marysville home.
First person I'd mention is Cornelia Cole Fairbanks. She was born here in Marysville, grew up in Marysville. She was the daughter of one of the Common Pleas judges, and her notoriety is that she married Charles Warren Fairbanks, who became Vice President of the United States, and they got married right here in Marysville at the Presbyterian Church. So we had the wife of a Vice President that was born here in Marysville. Another person that was of some interest from Marysville was Ella Dolbear Lee. She was an author and she was an illustrator. She was an artist. She had her own studio in Chicago. She had over 24 people in her studio, but she produced a lot of books. She did illustrations for other people's books. She did her own series, and her Mother Goose book in 1918 was very popular. She lived and donated the land where Memorial Hospital is. That was their family home. Next person I'd like to tell you about is Pauline Robinson Pierce. She also was born here in Marysville, raised in Marysville. Her father was an Ohio Supreme Court judge, and she's important because she was the mother of Barbara Bush, the First Lady of the United States. Her son-in-law was George H.W. Bush, who was President of the United States, and her grandson was George W. Bush.
It's an amazing story, 200 years of growth. Let's talk to the mayor one final time about the city of Marysville.
In 1838, the Ohio legislature incorporated the city of Marysville, and Otto Curry was elected its first mayor in 1840. A small village of only 360 residents in 1840, it grew quite rapidly to 849 residents by 1860. Slow and steady growth over the next 100 years led to Marysville becoming a city in 1971 with 5,000 residents. The city of Marysville swelled from 9,600 residents in 1990 to 22,000 in 2010. Here today in 2018, we have approximately 24,000 residents, and it's estimated that we're going to have between 42 and 47,000 by the year 2050. I would also like to say happy 200th birthday to the city that I love very dearly, Marysville, Ohio.